All right, guys. Well, welcome. Thank you for coming to my webinar, our webinar on WebStart. Okay, MSP Toolshed, going over the feature of WebStart. So, what's WebStart? What are we talking about here? What's going on? And honestly, there's a bunch that I could be talking about when it comes to WebStart, but really what I want you to understand is it is just another deployment method of MSP Toolshed. All right. It is a method, like for example, we have One Touch, which is what you'd use for out-of-box computers, new computers out of box. It's using the Windows provisioning packages, the PPKG files, to allow you to automate the process of getting computers deployed using configuration profile during the out-of-box experience. Well, WebStart, the intention behind it and why we call it WebStart is so that we can get a computer that's existing up and started with Toolshed quicker and much more easily. So let me go ahead and let's get Toolshed up on screen. So as you guys all know, with Toolshed, we're here to make a deployment quicker. All right. We want to simplify it, automate it, make it so that you can more easily manage it, and hopefully make your lives easier. One Touch is our number one method being used right now. WebStart's second. Well, we only have two, but that's the way. WebStart at its core, all right, is just getting the Toolshed service installed on the machine via MSI file. And why we call it WebStart is, well, we're creating a web page. We'd like to call it a self-service, self-help web page is the intention behind it. And the goal with it is to give it out to the end user so the end user could run the deployment. That's the long-term goal of WebStart, the idea behind it. But at the same time, being that's an MSI file that the end user is downloading, technically the technicians could do it also. All right, the technicians could throw it on a USB stick, have the MSI file, drop it on someone's computer, run it while you guys are doing inventories on site, things like that. But the usefulness of WebStart is that I can make a web page that I could send off to a remote user, that I could send off to an employee, so forth and so on. And I want to kind of go over the gist of how to set one of these up, and that we can talk more about. Well, actually, before I get to this, I'm going to go ahead and launch my poll real quick. It's only one question. And the idea behind it is to get an idea, have you utilized the WebStart feature as of yet? And that's really what I'm looking for. And then you see there's yes, no's kind of thing about it. And the idea behind it is for me to kind of gauge a little bit of where we're at with who's using what when it comes to WebStart. So go ahead and fill that out, and then I'll continue on. So let's talk more about like how we're going to utilize it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new one here and go over what each of these sections do, how you can utilize them. I will tell you right now, I have the automate integration enabled on this one here. So for those of you that do not have ConnectWise Automate, you can ignore anything when it talks about the RMM. Just note that there are other ways to deploy the different agents out there, and I'll touch briefly on that if there's any questions. But in this case, if you see RMM stuff, it's how to deploy the RMM agent and whatnot through a deployment method. And we'll talk about that later if there's any more details we need to go over. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to create a nice old MSP Toolshed deployment here. And I'm going to spell deployment right because, well, I'm typing. And I'm just going to use one of my demo configuration profiles. You're going to select which configuration profile you want to be utilized during this WebStart deployment. Okay. And we can select if we want to rename the computer or not. And I want to talk about this enter computer name one here. Okay. Because there is no naming rule. Actually, let me do this real quick. I'm just going to do Duff Beer because there is a naming rule set to Duff Beer. As you guys can see, if there's no naming rule, it gives you a little warning here. There's no naming rule set for this selected configuration profile. It tells you that there's no naming rule for this one. But if I go to, yeah, just Duff has it. Duff has a naming rule I could use. Duff Beer, for example. But what's this one here for? What's this enter computer name one for here? So this is a perfect example where if you got like a one-off situation, or maybe you have a remote worker you can create this WebStart profile just for that remote worker if you want, send it off to them, and then you can select, for example, remote ABC TAC 001, or I know this is going to be user Bob or something like that, or user one, user A. I can say that this is the for user A's WebStart deployment. Maybe I'm just creating it because what this is going to do is it's going to set the name of the computer to exactly what I write here. But just understand that this is going to essentially, if I use this MSI, this deployment on multiple computers, the name of those computers are always going to be what I have written here. Now, the idea behind this is like a one-time use. I could set up a one-time use. Hey, Mr. Remote User A, I need you to run this on your machine because it's one little once-off situation. What's the cool thing about it is you can rename their machine to whatever you want it to be. But then after the deployment's done, you can either delete this, duplicate it, whatever you want to get rid of it so it's no longer usable. Just to note, whenever you delete a deployment, any existing files that would utilize that deployment are null and void. They're essentially wiped. And I knew it. I was waiting for the time. My cat's here. Just as you guys know, who anybody's attended my webinars before, she always shows up for every single webinar I do. But I think I've blocked it so she can't get on my desk. Oh, there she is. But like I was saying with the computer names, this is a great case where you have that one-off circumstance where you need to rename a computer. You don't have a naming rule, but you need to specify exactly what it's going to be. But in the same circumstances, if you have a naming rule set up for a particular client, you want to utilize it however you see fit, you can do so. There goes the tail. And you can set the naming rule, and this will rename computers based on your naming rule. All right, we can always talk about naming rules more if you guys got some questions. But in this case, just understand this is a little more deeper dive into naming rules and how it can be used. All right. Otherwise, if you're not going to rename the computer, just uncheck the checkbox. I mean, you may already have, let's say you're onboarding a new client, but you're not ready to rename the computers because maybe they don't want to change, or they're fighting you a little bit on their how their naming rules, or maybe you like how their naming rules are set up. Maybe by chance they're actually set up properly. Well, you don't need to rename them. Okay. Enable RMM agent install. This is where you can select if it's going to install the automate agent in this case, because this is right now only applicable to automate. We do plan on the future having other RMMs available within integrations within Toolshed, but for now it's only automate. Otherwise, you could use custom installers, which we can chat more on that if there's some questions there. I would select where I want this to deploy to. In this case, I got my client and my location. And then I can write a welcome message. Remember, this is a web page that I'm creating to be able to send to an end user. Hello, Duff Beer. Thank you for being our client. Please use the PIN number provided to download and then install our software. Whatever it is you want to do. If you have any questions, please contact us here, and then whatever you want. Vanity URL. So the nice thing about this is I can set up a vanity URL for what's going to show up at the end of it. You'll see that we're using easydeploy.io is our URL for the deployment pages, for the WebStart pages, and then it's going to be / whatever I put here. Like I can put demo 123. And then a PIN number. This can only be randomized, just so you guys know, but we just recently added the feature in where you can actually copy and paste this into the field. I think Firefox and I think Edge also will ask you for permissions to be able to paste into a field. And then lastly, I can upload an image, which if I remember correctly, I just recently got a new image that I can use in here. So I got my little logo that I'm going to add in, and I'm going to submit this. And now I've got my web page. Here it is. Let's go ahead and open it up and take a look at it. we need to work on that so it does the sizing properly. But it blew up my little image a little bit more here, but you guys can see kind of like how it looks like. And then I can take my PIN number, put that in. As you guys case, it just allowed me to copy and paste it, which is new. Another thing that we recently did was you can actually backspace through all the PIN numbers. And then like there's what's going to show if you have an invalid PIN number in there. And then what I can do is click download. It should give us the big old orange arrow to tell us where the download is going to show up. There it goes. I can take this and put it into my downloads folder. Yep, let's go ahead and do that. And it walks just with the idea behind it is supposed to walk you through how to do the deployment. Okay. So because we're trying to make this user friendly. That's the whole idea behind this. And if you went to go run the MSI file right now, I will tell you right now, it just runs really quickly. It's relatively, you run it, next, you're done. That's it. It's very simple. There's nothing need to be entered in. I will give a forewarning here. All right. If you're using Microsoft Edge, or if the end user is using Microsoft Edge to run this MSI or download this MSI, it will prompt on Microsoft Edge because of smart screen. Smart screen will give a warning. This may be a dangerous file. We are looking at setting up this screen here to give warning to Edge users saying, hey, this may come up saying smart screen might give you a warning about it or something like that. So just kind of keep that in mind because it may prevent the end user from wanting to install. Okay, we are going to hopefully change. We have a plan in place to make changes so that Edge users will get notified saying, hey, you may have to watch out for smart screen. Awesome. We got a question that came in. Has there been any work done as far as using the EXE deployment option, how it handles 2FA? As do our SOC 2 restrictions, we can't have none at 2FA at automate admin. I know from previous session with MSP Toolshed, it can do something that's it's more of something on the CW side. Yeah, sadly, when it comes to, well, and that's not just EXE, with any deployment utilizing automate, we have to use an automate admin. And that doesn't actually have to be an automate admin, it has to be a limited permissions automate user. Now, at least with the MSP Toolshed 2.0, it's very limited. It uses, I think, 4 permissions is all it uses, is checked in automate. Just so you know, but there's nothing we can do about getting around the 2FA. It has to have the 2FA removed. It's a ConnectWise requirement. It's actually an automate is the issue. Automate itself is what's making that happen. It's the only way we can, and the only way we can integrate with the API is by using what's called an integrator user within automate. Sadly, there's no way for us to get around that. It's just the way they have their product set up. Wish I had a better answer for you on that one. Maybe in the future. What we do know that with ConnectWise RMM, we are investigating our ability to work with that. Any future integrations, we are going to take everything we can to make sure security is the primary requirement. But like I said, there's not much we can do about automate because we don't control how they developed it. I hope that answers your question. I apologize. I know it's security is a concern that a lot of people have. We want to be the most secure as we can when it comes to our product. But if the integration requires us to utilize that, that's the only way we're going to be able to do it, sadly. All right. And that's pretty much it when it comes to the WebStart. But let's talk about ways this can be used. Like I said, it's an MSI file. I could go in and show this in folder here and rename this to do something, be like client A's installer or client B's installer and toss it on MSI on a USB stick. That's one way the MSI file could be passed around. Okay. Second way is you could technically use the MSI file via group policy. Just make sure it's a single run. You don't want to run that MSI over and over and over again. I haven't had anybody tell me that it hasn't worked. I know we had a couple clients that have used the MSI group policy and it worked. Because you got to remember, this is not only going to be deploying the automate agent or whatever software you're installing, it's going to do everything that you've got in your configuration profile. That could include custom installers and PowerShell scripts too. So, I mean, you can have a lot of custom items that be done. The whole point of custom installers was to get around the ability to install different agents. And I mean, actually, I will tell you, whoever asked, it came across as anonymous, but one alternative is if you wanted to use custom installers to deploy the automate agent, you technically could, and you'd remove the automate integration, but you lose out on all of your RMM scripts. But at the same point, you'd still have the ability to use custom installers, and if you have the top package for our plans, you could also use PowerShell scripts, which could eliminate the need to utilize automate scripts entirely. So something to think about. If that's a concern, there is ways to work around that. And you're more than welcome to reach out if you'd like some help with that. I'd be happy to work with you on maybe seeing what we can do to figure out what would work best for you. I realize SOC 2 requirements and whatnot. So yeah, more than happy to help if you have a need on that area. Now, the other things to think about when it comes to utilizing the WebStart deployment method is the end users. Now, a lot of times when you get a new client on board, if they've already got a domain set up and they've got user restrictions and people admin, yeah, the MSI is probably not going to be the best for them because they're not going to be able to run it because they need admin privileges to run the MSI. But if you've got a new client coming on board, or let's say, for example, a remote user, and I tend to see a lot of people using this remote users more than I do see them using it for onboarding, which kind of surprises me, to be honest with you. At least when it comes to end users running the deployment for themselves. But remote users tend to be the easiest way to use this because they've usually either already have a laptop that, yeah, they probably shouldn't have, but they've already run through the deployment and run through the out-of-box experience, but you need to get your stuff on there for you. Okay. The only trickiness I have seen with that is because what ends up happening is someone is logging in with their Microsoft account and they use their personal Microsoft account. That's the only trickiness with that. You technically can run Toolshed on that machine, and what can then happen is get your stuff on there, and then what you have to do is blow out the profile and then have them redo their profile. So that's possible. You have that option. We haven't figured out any way to get around that yet. I know that's one of the things that we've been looking at, especially with Azure AD integrations, hopefully in the future. So I mean, once we get more hands-on with it with Microsoft and Intune, we'll be able to probably come up with more integration ideas and things we can do to alleviate that. But for now, right now where we stand is they could run the MSI, it'll install all the stuff, and then you guys can blow out and remote in and blow out the profile and try to rebuild that person's profile after the fact. All right, I know that can be a little tricky, but it's better than nothing, or having to remote in with the computer or walking them through it. So otherwise, let me see here. What else do I got? That's kind of the gist of it. I kind of figured this was going to be a shorter one. I'm open for any and all questions. Look at my poll here. A lot of you just have I know nothing about it. Okay, well, that's kind of what I was wondering. At this point here, I open up to questions. So there's a handful of folks here, so ask any questions you have. I'd be more than happy to go over things in more detail if you want to. But right now, kind of that's the basis of WebStart. It's like I said, it's creating a web page using an MSI file. How you see fit to use the MSI file is entirely up to you. I mean, that's kind of the gist of it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. If you can figure out ways to deploy an MSI, that's the way you do it. All right, Lonnie, can the web link be emailed to a client and then talk to them through the install? Yeah, that's kind of the intention behind it. You would send them the link, and you'd want to send them the PIN number, which, just so you know, if you ever need to look at the PIN number from this screen, you don't have to go into it. You can click on the eyeball icon. All right. And then I can just take this thing and say, hey, clients, please do me a favor, go through this website and use this PIN number and download. I would tell them, like, I would always put in there for warning, if you're using Edge, it may give you an error stating that it's a suspicious file. We have done all we can with Smart Screen to try to bypass that to get Microsoft to accept our MSI, but it's been an absolute nightmare. We actually went through all the hoops and bells and whistles that we were told to do, and it's still getting blocked by Smart Screen. Not blocked, it's getting warned. It's not, at one point it was getting blocked, but yeah, that would probably be the best way to go about it. Give examples, detail what it is, and just kind of let them know, and then tell them, hey, you can trust this. And you said something about price for small company. What you saying there? I'm not understanding what you're asking. Is there only one model? Okay, price model. So there is here, actually, let me go ahead. There is multiple pricing models. We have a few others. Is it Friday? Yeah, I hate to rub it in, but it is actually my Friday. I only work Monday through Thursday. But the funny thing is I tend to work on Fridays a little bit too because of, well, support tickets. But it's almost Friday. It's almost Friday. But yes, there are technically four different plans. Three of them are primarily available. You have the starter plan, which is limited to 15 deployments per month. So if you're a smaller shop INR that you're looking to just get started with it, we recommend the starter plan, and it's $150 a month, $149 a month. Professional is basically the next step up, which allows for unlimited deployments utilizing the tool, which is $249. Premier is unlimited deployments, but it's where you get the PowerShell scripting feature. And it also allows us to do additional training and support on the product. This essentially, I kind of rub this down to is additional consulting, going over more in depth how to utilize the product. It just allows me for a little more time to kind of give you guys more expanded training on it. And also, like, for example, I had one client, they brought their entire deployments team in, and I did a webinar for them, or I did a private training session just for them and their team of around like 10 people. I trained them on how to utilize the product, went over their questions, and what's cool about it is I was able to do it as a more technical, from a technical standpoint, from a technician standpoint, the user of the product kind of thing. And that was nice and beneficial. So that's where a step up that one comes in. And lastly, we have fully managed, which this is essentially a scoped project. We kind of scope out with the end user or the client to see what they're wanting. This is kind of like scoping out consulting, because we'll do PowerScope scripting, we'll do feature private request, like all kinds of additional on top of it. But we tend to we do this as a scoped out service. Find out your needs, and then the pricing is according to your needs and wants. What we're going to do. That's where the fully managed comes in, where we'll actually create the deployment profiles for you. We'll troubleshoot the deployments to ensure they're working properly. But at the same time, it becomes more, like I said, a kind of a consultant effort with us, because what we'll do is we'll actually have to like get required credentials, because we might want to be able to go in there and troubleshoot a deployment, take a look at the actuals. It allows us to essentially do all the work on that end for you. So, and if anybody's ever interested, that reach out, help at MSPToolshed.com. I'd be happy to discuss, and we can kind of get that rundown if you'd be. Otherwise, and you're very welcome, Einar. If you got any other questions on that, don't hesitate to reach out. I handle a lot of the client-facing side of everything. So if you got some further questions with like a little more of a hands-on demo, that kind of thing, reach out. Einar, if you don't mind me asking, do you already have Toolshed, or you're interested in using Toolshed? Because if you are, I'm more than happy to talk to you. You just have. Okay, cool. Yeah, just let me know if you run into any problems. Some future things kind of for you guys to know, so I don't have any more questions coming in. No, thank you, Andy. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I know, yeah, one man shop. Hey, if you have anything, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you got. Hopefully this will improve your deployment process. We do find that especially being a one-man shop, you're the only one doing those deployments, setting those computers up. So you're going to need something to help you speed your time up. I can understand. It's a rough life. And I have a buddy of mine that I'm still close to this day, who is a one-man shop, and he's always looking for anything he can do to make his life simpler. So, and I think his idea is the before I'll do everything I have to automate something before I hire someone else on, is his thought process behind it. All right, guys. Well, thank you for your time. Oh, one last little thing. I'm hoping Q2, you guys will start seeing a new little icon showing up in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It is going to be a chat icon. That's coming soon. I'm going to give you a little, since you guys are on the webinar, you'll hear about that here soon. The hope is that if you have a question, you can reach out as soon as possible to get that question answered. All right, guys. Thank you for your time. I still have time for questions if anybody else has got any more. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up. that's our half hour. I did a lot for like 15 minutes if there was additional questions. So I hope you guys are getting the most out of Toolshed. That's the biggest thing for us is we want to make this the best it can be. And if anybody runs into any problems, they can let us know. All right. Thank you for your time. I'm going to wrap it up. Have a good one.